morning and welcome. As there's just one of me, it means I can go on at greater length, which is very good because barristers they just love hearing the sound of their own voices. I'm a professor of law and assistant dean of the City Law School, part of City University of London, and I'm also the head of professional programmes, which means I have overall responsibility for the school's professional training, including the bar course, as well as the legal practice course, CPD, and all sorts of things. My brief was really to talk a little bit about what the bar professional training course is all about, what it's like to be a student on that course. I was going to say a little bit about funding, but leave to my friend the detail of that. I'm on my own there, aren't I? And then just drawing to your attention some of the things that you need to do by way of a timetable of actions in order to apply for the bar course. I've done a handout, a good old PowerPoint slide. You can't beat them, can you? We don't have projection facilities here, so you are spared the ordeal of text flying left, right, up, down, and disappearing on the screen. But it's just something for you to take away, and if you want to scribble notes on when will this ever end, that sort of thing, that's fine. And as Alice said, after the session I will join my colleagues at the City Law School stand for a while, and if there are things you want to ask me, please do come along, and I will do my best. I've also got my email address on the handout. If you wish to send me an email with any queries, you're very welcome to do so. So, bar professional training course, what's it all about? I think the starting point is, what do barristers do? And of course, that's a massive range of different things. But basically, we are a referral profession. There are some exceptions. Direct public access is now possible. But basically, we are generally a referral profession. So clients with problems are referred to us by other legal professionals. And the sort of things that the barrister will do is give advice, difficult points of law, sometimes difficult points of fact, unravelling facts and relating one to the other to give proper advice on how to solve the client's problems. You will draft legal documents, statements of case which set out the parties' contentions for the court. And of course, the really familiar role of the advocate in court, making submissions to courts, questioning witnesses, the stuff that we're used to from the television. Unsurprisingly, that's what you do on the bar course, because the bar course, although it has a knowledge element and a substantial knowledge element, is really a skills-based course, equipping you with the skills to be a barrister. So the subjects that you do on the bar course reflect what the barrister does. I've listed the main components, the skills of advocacy. As I say, that's the familiar thing of questioning witnesses, the old examination in chief and cross-examination. Making submissions to the court. There's a lot of advocacy involving submissions to the court. Conference skills, which is what the BPTC labels client interviewing, meeting the client, taking their instructions, advising them face-to-face. Opinion writing, where you advise the client in writing. Students often find it a bit difficult to move away from essay writing. When you're studying law for the sake of studying law, because it's a fascinating topic, you're writing essays about the law. When you go to the bar course, you're using law as a tool, as a way of achieving something. It's not an end in itself. You're using it to advise a client how that client can improve their position or achieve their objectives. So it's using law really quite differently to the way it's used at the undergraduate stage. And drafting, that means drafting of court documents, statements of case, setting out your party's contentions and responding to the other side's contentions. These days, because of ever-shrinking resources, both in terms of time and money in the courts, we're encouraging the use of skeleton arguments. So you set out your arguments in writing beforehand, the judge reads them beforehand, and then quizzes you on what you've written. That's the more modern style of advocacy that's becoming quite familiar. So there's a drafting task in terms of skeleton arguments. And of course you have to have some knowledge. You have to know how the criminal courts work. You have to know about the rules of evidence which govern whether the court can receive a particular piece of information or not. Likewise, you have to understand how the civil courts work, the remedies that are available. Ethics, absolutely vital. We have to be able to trust advocates to be doing the right thing, not cutting corners, not cheating, not being dishonest. So it's things like if you're representing one party and you're aware there's an authority which goes against you, human instinct might be, I'll keep that to myself and hope they don't notice. There may be an ethical problem there. You might have a duty under the Code of Conduct to reveal the information to the other side. Alternative dispute resolution. This is becoming increasingly important as people can't afford to go to the courts. They're looking at other ways of resolving their disputes, from arbitration, mediation, expert determination, all that sort of thing. That, you may think, well, gracious me, that's enough for an academic year. But there are also options. The basic BPTC is delivered according to a framework laid down by the Bar Standards Board, where providers are able to personalise their offering a little bit is through the range of options they offer. The Bar Standards Board doesn't prescribe what options have to be made available. Typically, it's a relatively short period of study. It's not aiming to make you an expert in that particular topic. It's helping you to see how the skills that you've learnt in the programme can then be applied to a specialist area of law. And obviously, if you're thinking of practising in a particular area, and it's perhaps one that you haven't studied previously, using the facility of options as a way of becoming acquainted with that is possibly quite a good thing to do. Each bar course is set up slightly differently, but on average, something like, we say, 12 to 14 hours of contact time per week, which doesn't sound a great deal. Add in the preparation that you have to do. Imagine you're having an opinion writing class and you've got to have written a fully drafted opinion before the session. That's going to take you several hours. We would say that you should regard the bar course as a full-time job. Now, we realise, a side light on funding, a number of people do have to hold down a job as well as a bar course. One possibility is part-time study. It is possible to combine part-time employment with the full-time bar course, but you have to be very strategic in your use of time. You need to plan things well in advance, and you need to be in touch with your chosen provider to see what can be done in terms of blocking your teaching so that you've got some time in which you can earn a bit of extra money. But essentially, if you're going to do a good job at the bar course, it really is a full-time job in terms of the amount of work that you have to do. As I say, it's apart from the knowledge, it's a skills-based course. You learn by doing. The best way of becoming an advocate is to have a go, get feedback, and have another go. So you might be trying to ask some examination-in-chief questions of a witness. You have a go. It's recorded, so you can view your performance afterwards. None of us like seeing ourselves on television, but it's very good to see yourself in action. You get feedback. You ask too many leading questions. Don't ask leading questions in examination-in-chief. And you have an explanation of how you avoid doing that. And then you have another go, this time hopefully with fewer leading questions. The assessments, likewise, for the skills are assessing by doing, writing an opinion, questioning a witness, making a submission to a tutor playing the role of a judge, advising a live client. That's the sort of thing that you do at the bar. That's what the bar course is about. Therefore, that's how it's assessed. So for those who like exam hall exams, you're going to be slightly disappointed because for the interpersonal skills, it's not going to work like that. For the skills of opinion writing and drafting, they are done under invigilated conditions. That's a Bar Standards Board rule. But again, you are doing a draft. You are writing an opinion. So you're simply performing the skill and being assessed on it. The knowledge subjects, that's the civil procedure, criminal procedure, professional ethics, alternative dispute resolution, they are perhaps slightly more traditional in that they are exams. The format for some of them is what's called single best answer questions, where you write a short narrative. For quite a lot of the subject matter, the examination is in the form of single best answer questions, which is where you have a fact pattern, 4 options. One of those options is the best of the 4. Your mission is to pick the right one as the best of the 4. Those assessments are set and marked by the Bar Standards Board itself. I mentioned the possibility of trying to clear some time in order to hold down employment whilst you're studying for the bar course. In terms of other funding, and I've not said much about this on the handout on the basis it was going to be dealt with by someone else, really 3 potential sources of funding to highlight. Each of the inns invests a lot of money each year in scholarships. Now, I say that slightly nervously because the deadline for applying for BPTC scholarships was yesterday. So this is probably not something very helpful to say in terms of studying in the coming year. Hopefully, though, you knew about the deadline and applied within time. The providers each have their own scholarship system. I'm not going to do a rolling advert for the City Law School, so I'm not going to tell you the specifics of our scholarship system, but each provider has a system of scholarships that they operate, broadly similar criteria. But that's a potential source of funding. Certainly as far as City is concerned, there are some full fee scholarships, not many of them obviously, but also some partial fee scholarships of £5,000 throw. If you come to us with a first, you get an automatic scholarship of £1,500. Might be worth thinking about. The other source of funding, loans. There are a number of providers, finance providers, who have special tailored packages for students, and it's worth researching those and seeing if there's one which suits you. City University of London doesn't have a credit broking licence, so I'm not going to advertise the provider that we work alongside. But there are finance providers who offer loans which are in the form of packages which are kind of tailored to the student life rather than other things. Other things to think about, just turning over the sheet of paper. This is where it gets slightly technical, and it's really just to make sure that things aren't overlooked. Obviously, the Bar Standards Board requires you to get a qualifying law degree. You may have heard in the press that there are question marks about whether In a couple of years' time, those wanting to be solicitors will have to have a qualifying law degree. At the moment, the view of the bar is that those who want to go on bar courses should be graduates, and so either have a law degree or a degree in another subject and then the GDL. I don't think that's going to change. So the requirement to have a qualifying law degree or GDL, I think, is likely to remain for the foreseeable future. The Bar Standards Board also sets a minimum English language requirement. It is self-certifying, but if someone on a course demonstrates difficulties with English language, then they can be required to obtain certification that they comply with the Bar Standards Board minimum standard, and if they can't do that, I'm afraid they have to leave the programme, so just be aware of that. The other thing that you have to do, and everyone has to do this to get on a bar course, you have to do the BCAT. Not as exciting as it sounds, the bar course Aptitude Test. I have to say, conscious it's being recorded, so I'll be careful what I say, it's not really an aptitude test as such, it's more of a critical reasoning test. But then critical reasoning is part of what you need to be able to do as a barrister. It's a relatively short test. We reckon it takes about 40 minutes to perform, but you have to get that sorted before you can get on a bar course. The other thing you have to do, you cannot start a bar course if you're not a member of an inn. So you have to choose one of the inns. I'm not going to give advice as to which is the best inn. I'm a member of the Inner Temple. I just say that just to keep the conversation going. Your institution might possibly have links with one of the inns. Otherwise, you might simply choose location. Doesn't really matter. Things to do. Your homework. Gracious, you didn't think you were going to get set homework, did you? Just things to think about. And I've given you dates where dates are available. The application procedure for the Bar Professional Training course is centralised. You apply through a system called BARSAS, Bar Student Application Service. Closing date, it's web-based. Closing date for first round applications is the 9th of January. And can I just give a general piece of advice? Whenever something is web-based and has a deadline, do not leave it to the last minute. Because do you know what happens the last minute? The system crashes. Because too many people have left it to the last minute and the servers can't cope. Every year there will be problems with servers going down because people are leaving it to the last minute and the system can't cope. Don't leave it to the last minute. Give yourself time. I've given you the rest of the timetable on the handout. Offers go out on the 2nd of March. Acceptance has to be done by the 4th of April, and then there's a clearing process which kicks off shortly after that. You have to do the aptitude test, as I've said. Dates for that have not yet been published, but they are available or will be available through the Bar Standards Board website. Pupilage. Not all chambers go through the Pupilage Gateway process, but for those that do, the process kicks off this year earlier than previous years. So if you're looking at information supplied in previous years, watch out for the Pupilage Gateway. It has moved earlier. It was around March, April time. It's been shifted forwards. The application period during which the Pupilage Gateway is open is from the 9th of January to the 7th of February. I repeat my advice as far as the 7th of February is concerned. Don't leave it until the 7th of February to submit your applications. The server will collapse. and you'll miss the deadline. The other thing just to bear in mind when you're applying through the Gateway, you're applying to a number of different chambers through the same process, but you do a different application for each set of chambers. Do watch copying and pasting. It's not very impressive for chambers at 3 Bedford Road to get an application which says, "My life would end if I didn't come to 23 Essex Street." Yeah. It happens so frequently. Joining an inn, it's a formality, but it's a formality that you have to go through. You're not allowed to start a bar course if you're not a member of an inn. They require applications by the 31st of May each year, and so you need to have made your application before that date in order to start the bar course that September. I've then given you a list of websites. If anyone would like this handout electronically, so you can then just click on links, send me an email, and I will happily send you the slideshow. Otherwise, you can laboriously type them out. Or I suppose you could Google them. That might be quicker. That is what I had planned to say, slightly longer than I planned to say, given that I'm 2 people today. We've got another 20 minutes?
Let's say 15.
My reputation for timekeeping has plainly gone ahead of me. 15, I stand corrected. 15 minutes for questions. So the floor is yours.
You mentioned first the £15,000. It's a city scholarship, or what is this, please?
The numbers I gave referred to city scholarships. Each provider will do different things. I was just kind of giving an idea of the sort of amounts which might be available.
Okay, thank you. Is it like, how much of the BPTC can you expect to get funded through like scholarships and stuff? Is it a lot of people that manage to get a scholarship covering the fees, living expenses? Or is it most likely that you'll have to have some savings or work alongside?
The different inns do things differently, slightly, but there are certainly some scholarships which are both course fee and living expenses. Some are just confined to course fee. As far as provider scholarships are concerned, I think the norm would be scholarships which relate to tuition fees rather than living expenses, because the way I think most providers do it is rather than giving a cheque to the student, you simply don't bill them for a proportion of the course fee. But yes, certainly the inns do offer a number of scholarships which include living expenses as well as course fees.
Okay.
You said that Fast House applications close on the 9th of January. When do they open?
Double checking my note. They should be open very, very shortly. When I checked the website, I put these slides together on the 11th of this month, on 2nd of this month rather. The date hadn't been published, but I would expect it to be very shortly. Within the next 2 or 3 weeks. Certainly well before the Christmas break.
Any more questions?
Go round again. Lead the way.
How are the possibilities for getting into the BPTC? Is it a lot of, what proportion of the applicants actually get in?
Bear in mind there are a number of providers across the country.
Let's say London.
In London, I think so long as you satisfy the entry requirements, you are likely to get an offer from at least one provider. I think the pinch point is more at the pupilage stage than the professional training, the vocational training stage. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. There may be... you can't guarantee necessarily getting your provider of choice, but Most people do. Most people do. And the Bar Standards Board validated more places than were actually needed. And a lot of us consciously don't use all our validated allocation because we don't want the place overcrowded. But I wouldn't worry too much about that. If you satisfy the entry requirements, you'll be fine.
How many students do you have currently for the course, and how many applications you received for this number?
Oh, gracious, that's a technical number. To be honest, I can't recall how many applications we had.
Double or triple?
We had, I can tell you we've got 360 students on our programme this year. I can't remember how many applicants we had. I think across all the providers, I think it is something like 1,500 applications per year. A number of those then, and of course they're going across all the providers, some drop out because they decide to do the LPC instead, or indeed to pursue a different career path.
And this cover both full-time and part-time?
Yes. Yeah.
What would your top piece of advice be for BPTC applications?
For the application itself, I would focus on sharing relevant experience and showing why it's relevant. And the same applies if you're going to be applying for pupilage at the next opening of the gateway. It's really a similar process, not just asserting you have a particular skill, but proving it. So it's not enough to say, I've got great interpersonal skills. Well, fine, anyone can assert that. Well, not me, obviously. Anyone can assert that. What you've got to do is give evidence. And that's a familiar concept to us lawyers. What have you done which demonstrates great interpersonal skills? So always think about evidencing what you assert. And that applies to the BPTC application form and applies even more, with bells and whistles on, for the pupilage applications. Your assertion that you have a particular aptitude, a particular skill, frankly is worthless. You've got to explain the foundation for that assertion. If you do that, you won't go far wrong. If anyone wants advice on pupilage applications, the city stand, we've got a couple of people there who are on our pupilage advice team, so they can give you a bit of advice on how to sell yourself in the pupilage application process. But thank you. Good kind of wrap-up question. Which doesn't mean you can't ask any more questions, but I'm kind of feeling that we might have kind of got to the bottom of them. In which case, thank you very much for coming along and listening. I will go up to the city stand for a while if there are questions you want to ask that you didn't want to ask with a load of other people listening. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.